Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Analysis with me, Mas Patel. A leading Israeli human rights group issued its most damning report yet on the war in Gaza earlier this week. In a new paper titled Our Genocide, Betalem, an organisation made up of both Palestinians and Jewish-Israelis, says Israel is taking coordinated action to intentionally destroy Palestinian society in Gaza. The report documents mass killings, systematic destruction of homes, schools and hospitals, and the creation of conditions unfit for human life. It warns that Israel's military campaign has gone beyond war and now constitutes genocide. But Betelem's researchers have gathered testimonies, statistics and visual evidence showing how infrastructure, food systems and healthcare have been deliberately dismantled. The result? More than 2 million people subjected to what the report calls irreparable harm. The group also cites statements by senior Israeli politicians and military figures to argue that the destruction is not incidental but ideological. They accuse Israel of employing apartheid, demographic engineering and violent dehumanization to justify ethnic cleansing. Betalem's executive director, Yair Dvir, calls this a deeply painful moment for Israel. But she says remaining silent is not an option. Here is more of what she had to say following the release of this landmark report earlier this week.
זה בלתי נתפס, אבל כמעט שנתיים שישראל מבצעת ג'נוסייד בפלסטינים ברצועת עזה. ג'נוסייד הוא דבר שלא אמור לקרות, לא פה ולא בשום מקום ולא בכלל. זה מסוג הדברים שפשוט לא יכולה להיות להם הצדקה. לא האמנו שנכתוב את הדוח הזה אי פעם, אבל אנחנו גם חיים בתוך מציאות שלא האמנו שנגיע אליה. על סמך המידע והנתונים שהצטברו ועל בסיס ניתוח עמוק ויסודי של הסיטואציה, ברור לנו שישראל פועלת באופן מכוון ומתואם להביא להרס טוטלי של הפלסטינים ברצועת עזה.
ג'נוסייד זה הרס אלים מכוון של קבוצה מובחנת, במיוחד קבוצה אתנית, לאומית, דתית או גזעית, כקבוצה, כלומר הקורבן בג'נוסייד הוא לא רק האינדיבידואלים שחברים בקבוצה, אלא גם הקבוצה כקבוצה.
ג'נוסייד תמיד ילווה במחיקת האנושיות של הקורבנות, כלומר בדה-הומניזציה שלהם. תביני, עזה נבנתה במשך עשורים בראש של הישראלים כמין חור שחור. בני אדם שחיים שם הם אלה שאפשר להטיל עליהם מצור, שאפשר להתקיף בהפצצות בלתי מובחנות. הם אלה שאפשר היה במשך שנים לפגוע בהם בלי לשאת בשום אחריות ובלי לתת על כך את הדין.
That was Betalem's executive director, Yair Dvir, following the release of the organisation's damning report on the war on Gaza. With me now to discuss and further dissect the report is Professor Jonathan Rosenhead, the executive committee member for Jewish Voice for Labour, and from Betalem is their spokesperson, Yair Dvir. Yair, let's start off with you. Why did Betalem decide to release this report now? And why use such strong language calling it our genocide, knowing full well that Israel and the United States vehemently denied anything of the sort is taking place in Gaza?
Hello, good evening. We are working on this report for some months, gathering testimonies, data, that show that systematic and intentional efforts to destroy the Palestinian population in Gaza. As a human rights organization who Jewish, Israeli and Palestinians are working together for many years already to try to resist the Israeli apartheid regime and the Israeli occupation, we cannot stay silent. We must call the things by its names. And we call it our genocide because it's not only about data and facts, which is well known already around the world about what is happening, but it also people from this land, people that are experiencing the genocide from within, either as part of the victims or as the part of the group of the perpetrators. We hear the talking in the streets. We hear the talking of our politicians. And we see that it's way more than a war. It's, as I say, it's intentional, systematic against the population, and we need to call it by its name.
Yair, thank you so much for coming on and being so open to join us and to be questioned on this. I've heard Israeli government spokespersons saying that Betalem is a fringe group. It's not even left, it's on the fringe of the left movement, and also questioning your human rights credentials. What do you say to that reaction where they seem to be attacking the organisation and not what's contained in the report?
Of course, we could predict that. I must say that Betalem indeed is not the mainstream voice inside the Israeli society at the moment. But there are more and more people that start to be aware, even inside the Israeli society, to what is really happening here. And our call is both to the Israeli society, which we try to get them awake and open their eyes, but also we understand that we cannot wait until the change from within will come. So, of course, we are also calling to the international community to do whatever they can to stop this genocide.
Okay, thank you. Professor Rosenhead, turning to you, you're coming from the Jewish Voice for Labour movement, which is obviously part of the wider left groupings in this country. When you see a report like this from an Israeli organisation using the word genocide, what do you feel? What are your reactions to this?
Well, my organisation is absolutely opposed to what the Israeli government is doing. So we start from there. We are horrified, but in a sense not surprised, because it's been coming. It's been coming for years. Well, you could say it's been coming for 70 years, but it didn't just start on October the 7th. And our position is that the treatment of the Palestinians by Israeli regimes, successive ones, is outrageous, and it's astonishing that the international community has allowed it to happen. Now, it's gone beyond all the limits that one might have thought, and it's quite clearly genocidal, ethnic cleansing. And the report from Betalem is not the only one we've had. We've had reports from Amnesty and Human Rights Watch. Betalem report is coming along a bit afterwards, because I think they have been exceptionally careful about collecting the information and managing it. It's also true, I believe, that it's not really being covered in Israel. So it's big news around the world that this report by the premier human rights organization in Israel has come out so strongly, but many Israelis probably wouldn't even have heard about it, because there is that kind of voluntary self-censorship on the media.
Yair, the report states very clearly, actually, that the destruction in Gaza is not accidental, but it's intentional and ideological. Can you explain how Betalem reached that conclusion?
We saw from the very beginning of the Israeli attacks many of the policymakers of Israel and the high officials of the army that are stating it very clear that they, Benjamin Netanyahu called the Palestinians Amalek, which every Israeli and every Jew in the world understand exactly what the meaning. It means that we should not leave anyone alive. And the president, he say that there is entire nation that is responsible. So from the very beginning, we hear that. And then we saw this happening, then we saw it's not only statements, we saw for already 22 months systematic attacks that is aiming to the population itself. You know, when you starve 2 million people, when you force displaced almost 2 million people, when there are units now in the army while we are talking 24/7 with bulldozers and D9, they are moving from house to house to make sure that there is no any place to return, and we already see whole cities that been destroyed. So when you see this, you understand that the goal is not, it's not a war. The goal is the population itself. And actually, in the last months, they already say it, you know, straightforward. They say that the goal is to ethnic cleansing all the 2 million population from Gaza. So it's not, it's very clear.
And Yair, just to stay with you, some critics will argue that Betalem should have come out much more earlier to call it a genocide. What's your response to them?
As I said before, we were working on this report for a while. And as an organization who are here on the ground, when we come to this conclusion, we need to really have the work to base it and to be able to frame it also in a way. We were asking ourselves, what is our role in this? And we understand that it's not only about calling it genocide, but it's also about the explanation, the deep explanation of the process that led us, led the Israeli regime to become a genocidal regime, which is the historical process, and also the warning about the meaning of it, not only on Gaza, but also in the other areas under the Israeli regime. And in the report, we are talking a lot also about these implications about the Palestinians in the West Bank and inside Israel.
Professor, do you see an emerging consensus? We had just a day or so ago 31 very prominent Israelis who published an article in the Israeli newspaper Haaretz, speaking against this war, calling it not genocide, but calling it certainly saying that the war needs to end. There are war crimes being committed. We've had Ehud Olmert, saying that there are war crimes. Ehud Barak, somebody not seen to be on the left of the Israeli political spectrum, calling out this war, and many other individuals, former heads of Mossad, etc. And it seems that Israeli dissidents, at least, are speaking out against this war, and that it's not a just war, but a project to eliminate the Palestinians. What do you say to that?
I think there has been, belatedly, and just in the last few weeks, a general shift in the opinion and the views expressed by the governments around the world that have been holding out from criticizing Israel. Already, I think about 140 countries around the world have recognized the state of Palestine. But none of the ones that are most important to the United States have done so. And now they are finally now beginning to come out and say that maybe, perhaps under certain circumstances, they might recognize they're holding out a sort of conditional offer to the Palestinians that they might get recognition. And that is outrageous, because these are human rights. But nevertheless, it represents a shift in world opinion. And I think it's really belated, because, of course, the populations around the world have been clear for months and months around the world that what we're seeing in real time is the ultimate atrocity. And our governments, for reasons of realpolitik, have been trying not to recognize this. It's a scandal. We built up some views of what was permitted or not permitted in the civilized world as a result of the Holocaust and the Second World War. And all these have been trashed by Israel, of all countries. And hopefully, eventually, the rest of the world will call Israel to account.
It seems that the images that we've seen over the last 2-3 weeks, I think, that's what has changed public opinion and also the opinion of those who have great influence, whether it's cultural or political. We know that calling this a genocide is now mainstream public opinion, as was admitted to by the former Tory minister Michael Gove. Yair, Betalem is made up of both Jewish and Palestinian Israelis. So how has that report that you've published been received inside Israel? Because we know outside you're a very well-respected organisation and you're quoted in many, many people's speeches. Your reports are certainly held with a lot of weight. But what's the impact within Israel, and have you faced any pushback?
Yeah, so unfortunately, this is part of the problem, because while we are here speaking and millions of people around the world are aware of this report, inside the Israeli society, I guess most of the people even didn't hear about it. We have maybe the left media, they report about it, but in the mainstream media, in the TV, and most of the people, this is what they are watching, they didn't even mention this. And, you know, this is just another example of how delusional and how distinct from reality the Israeli society become, mostly because, you know, the politicians, and because of the media, and because also people choose not to open their eyes. But as you mentioned, also inside Israeli society, we can see in the last weeks the crack that is starting to become bigger.
And, well, I think you make a point which isn't appreciated by many of us in the outside world. You obviously live in the Middle East. You get to observe what takes place in a country which is in the heart of where the conflict is taking place. Yet here you are talking in an atmosphere which must be quite oppressive in many respects, because there's a war going on. Professor Rosenhead, when we put that report and the circumstances that Betalem has published this, and we look at what's been taking place in the UK, the demonization of pro-Palestine protesters, those standing against division. Many of those have been Jewish citizens of this country as well. How does it make you feel that the tide is shifting? Even in the United States, many prominent right-wing commentators, Tucker Carlson, Candace Owens, and others as well, have said very clearly and unequivocally that they do not support, in fact, they are opposed to what they also term to be a genocide.
Yes, I think if you're talking about Britain, which I know best, and talking about the Jewish community, which I come from,
yes.
There is certainly an unwillingness to speak out and criticize Israel. There's a sort of sense of the costs socially, because many Jews majority have Jewish friends and so on. And I think there is a silencing that's going on there. But undoubtedly, there is a significant movement, particularly among younger Jews, who find this outrageous that this should be going on, and claiming to be done in the name of all Jews when it's by no means. And in any case, even if it were, it would be utterly immoral to be carrying out these atrocities.
Yair, back to you. Yesterday I was listening to the Palestinian ambassador, Bamiyan, speaking on the Piers Morgan show. And he was talking about peace. He was talking about rapprochement between Israelis and Palestinians, about having a two-state solution, about both agreeing to the other's claims to the land, if you will, and living in peace and respect, and for Israel to be integrated within the Middle Eastern region, because it simply cannot go on relying on the West or relying on the United States. It's in the Middle East. It needs to be incorporated within the Middle East. And then later on, Danny Danon, the Israeli ambassador, both are ambassadors to the United Nations, he came out and he completely spoke in opposite terms. And one wondered whether Israeli government officials want to have peace in the Middle East, want to have a situation where Israel is not at war with its neighbours, it's got secure borders, and everybody accepts that there is a Palestinian state as well. Do you think we are further away from that than ever in terms of it becoming a reality, especially in light of all these countries that are now saying they will recognise a Palestinian state?
It's difficult to predict, what will happen. In one way, we are very far from here because, the genocide is happening, and it's very difficult to imagine even an atmosphere of peace and justice. At the same time, maybe that's what will happen in the end, because I think now the world understands that the Israel regime, and when I say Israel regime, I don't speak only about this current extreme government, but I speak about the concept of Jewish supremacy. We see what is what is the end of this ideology in the end of the day. And of course, I don't mention that was the genocide was in the dreaming of the people, but you cannot maintain a regime or system that is based on injustice, that is based on supremacy. So our hope is that the international community will understand also this, that it's not acceptable anymore, not only the genocide, but also the whole idea of Jewish supremacy. And we will reach to a point where justice and equality and all the people of this land will learn how to live as equals.
Thank you, Yair. Final words from both of you. Professor Rosenhead, we've got somebody who I consider to be those that will stand up and defend people he sees being oppressed, even if it is not supported by those around him. How many more Israelis need to stand up and say enough is enough and say this has got to end? And in terms of recognition, do you think our Prime Minister saying under certain conditions they will recognise a Palestinian state in September is a welcome move, however belated and however conditional it is? So just two very, very separate issues, and both of you can answer very, very quickly. First you, Professor Rosenhead, and then I'll go to Yair.
Okay, the right to self-determination should not be conditional. Recognition should not be withheld from a whole population on the grounds that it's inconvenient to the governments. Those who are not taking action to recognize Palestine and who are not taking action to sanction Israel are in violation of treaty obligations which they hold. They are complicit. The Israelis are pursuing what I think is in effect a war without end. They're in favor of greater Israel, which has already stolen chunks of Syria, is stealing chunks of Lebanon, and will go further. And we saw this in the 1930s. Israel is not Germany, but we should learn some lessons from history that we should not let these sorts of violations go unpunished and not stopped by those who have the power to stop them, but do not do so.
And Yair, you're obviously very, very we're short on time, but just very, very quickly, Yair. Do you want more Israelis to stand in solidarity with your organisation and for peace, or do you think it's way beyond that point?
Of course, we want more Israelis to be in solidarity, but I think we also cannot wait to this change from within, and we must the action of the international community. We cannot wait.
Well, thank you so much, Yair. I really appreciate you coming on. Hopefully we'll have you on again soon. And also yourself, Professor Rosenhead, thank you both for joining my show. Folks, that's all we've got time for, but today we had some extremely admirable individuals talking about the situation in Gaza. I'm Patel. I'll see you again soon.